Now, you can use a streaking grime to help give a grimy realism to your models and your scenery. But did you know you actually have options? And not only that, the places you'd use them, the way you use them, the colours and the results you get can be very, very different. Well, let's find out. Now, of course, you can buy them individually, but it's often cheaper to buy them as a set, especially ones that complement each other. So this is the AK Interactive Streaking Effects set. Now this is part of the AFV series, or the Armoured Fighting Vehicle series, and therefore, as you can see from the box art, it's kind of designed to be used on tanks and armoured personnel carriers and that sort of thing. So you could use this both for tabletop and gaming miniatures, as well as scale models. Now in this set, it comes with 3 different paints. So first of all, you've got the AK Interactive Streaking Grime. Now this is the one that people are probably most familiar with, also known as AK-012. This is quite a kind of a dark browny kind of grime, and we'll have a play with that in a bit. The next one is the AK Interactive Winter Streaking Grime, also enamel, also known as AK-014. Now this one, from the bottle, it looks much more a greeny one. So you can see the difference between the two there. This one's much browner. This is more of a greeny, bluey kind of colour. So we'll see how that works out in a bit. The final one is Rust, also known as AK-013. Now, this one, as you expect, is much more of a browny, rusty kind of colour. Now, all 3 are enamels, therefore you're going to need something like a white spirit. So you could use the AK Interactive, like AK-011 white spirit, or any white spirit, or enamel thinners will do the same job. Okay, so we need something to test it on. Now, I'm going to use this piece from the Kill Team Octaria set, primarily because it's kind of a scrap heap type piece, so therefore we can try different colours, different effects on it without it looking too out of place. And as you can see here, I've painted it in some different colours, so you've got a kind of greeny sort of colour here, a kind of light grey, as well as like a light blue, like a Space Wolf type blue. Also, for a giggle, I've done a little bit of that dirty down verdigris on there and used the dirty down rust on some of the pieces as well. So we can see how they kind of interact together and how they look with that mixed media type approach. Now, the first question I want to look at these 3 is how do the colours differ? So let's have a look at that first of all. So to test that, I've painted panels on the inside of here white, so we can see the colours a lot easier. Now, consistency is like a very kind of loose paint. Colour-wise, it's basically like a very, very dark kind of khaki sort of colour. It's a very slightly greeny dark brown. Okay, so let's close that up. Do not want to knock this over because that would definitely spoil my day. Okay, so the next one is going to be the Winter Streaking Grime. And then once again, I've cleaned the brush and put a nice load on here. Just covering it in there. Now, as you can see there already, it's a lot greener. It's like a dark, it's still kind of slightly browny and grimy and grotty, but it is a lot greener than that standard AK Interactive Streaking Grime. So once again, clean my brush out in between. And last but not least, the rust streaks. So let's give this a go. I've not even opened this one yet. There we go. Let's put that on here, dog that in there. So as you would expect, this one is a lot browner. Sort of a lot more reddy brown rather than the this one here, which is much more of a greeny sort of brown. So yeah, that's interesting. So we'll let that dry and see how they look when it's dry. So as we've got that one open, let's try that rust first of all on this kind of surface here. Also, I want to see how it works on this kind of metallic side over here as well. Now, interestingly, this bit here is the dirty down rust. So let's just chuck that over there for now to see what happens when it does that. And then just paint it over this dark brown. Now, first of all, I want to see how it works with the reductive technique, and then we'll try some streaking effects with it. So I'm literally not doing anything special with this, I'm just covering the entire thing. Now, I don't want to drown it in it, so I'm not trying to put too deep a layer on, but I want to make sure it's good and covered. Now, once that's done, I'm going to give it a few minutes to dry off. Now, depending on how hot it is, the humidity and that sort of thing, it may be different for wherever you're using it. So just be aware of that and just keep an eye on it and test it out a little bit when you're first using it. So what I'm going to use is like a cotton wool pad, like you can get from Makeup Counter. Put a little bit of thinners on it and create like a point. You want to be careful with this, so you want to make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on it, because if you do that, then you can start taking the paint off, which is not really the effect you're looking for in this one. Now you can drag it down, but also when you've got slightly more complex shapes like this, it's not quite so easy to get a strong sweep down. You can just kind of dab it as well, and that motley effect can look very good as well. Now this bit is kind of one of the things I want to show you, is that you've got different colours and you can use that to your advantage. Now if you put them on a surface that is too similar to the colour you're using, then it hides it. You don't really get the effect very well. So therefore you kind of got the rusty effect there, but you kind of lost a little bit there. However, when it's on a different colour, then you get quite a nice result. Now you don't want to let it dry too much. If you let it dry too much, it'll start to cure on it, and then that will not be so good. But what about the price? Is it cost effective? Now, even though the economy's gone slightly crazy at the moment, one pot of this is about £6.45. So if you're going to get the 3 of them, you're looking at £19.35. Whereas a set of the 3 paints, you're looking about £14.95. So you're going to make a bit of a saving there. Now, if you want to get hold of some and check out the most up-to-date prices, I've put a whole range of links down in the description for you. The links in that resource list are affiliate links. Now how this works is that I only put affiliate links in from the companies that I buy from myself. Now if you are thinking of buying something anyway, and you click on one of those links and buy something then it means that a little bit of commission comes back to me from that company, and then it means I can then put that money back into buying more kit and equipment to test out and share with you guys. Now of course, if you are doing a larger terrain piece, you can use a bigger brush as well to make life a little bit easier for yourself. Cover that surface a lot quicker and easier. Right, so let that dry. Now what I'm trying to do, I don't want it to be just one big brown lump, so I'm trying to keep it fairly thin, and I'm trying to also using bright colours. They show up a bit better through that grime. Now this is one of the tricky things with this sort of terrain, is that there's lots of little panels, so it's a lot more difficult to get that streaking kind of effect. So with this sort of thing, looking at much more of an aging / griming it up rather than creating a streaking effect. But as you can see there on larger panels, then by getting a stiffer brush and just kind of running it from top to bottom, you can get quite a much nicer kind of streaking sort of effect that you might be looking for there. That's quite cool there. So you kind of got you've got multiple options with this. You've got the general griming and dirting it up, or you can create on larger panels, you can create that streaking effect. It's much easier to get that streaking effect on a larger flat surface compared to lots of fine detail like in here. As you can see, it's really dulled down those bright colours. So you can put quite bright, strong colours and really darken it and grimy it and grunge it up. Now what's interesting is that this is the first time I've used the rust streaks, and yeah, it kind of works fairly well. It does look quite nice over those metallics. It's not quite as rusty as I was expecting, if that kind of makes sense. It is a very much kind of a brown streaking grime. But yeah, that's quite interesting. But turning it over, look at the actual colours. Now, if you can see that there, and look at the colour difference between the 3 here. So all of them streaking grimes, all of them by AK Interactive, but very, very different. It's the standard streaking grime, which is the AK 012. Is kind of a very much a browny, dark khaki kind of colour. The winter streaking grime, which is the AK 014, it's a lot greener, and I can see how that would be working quite nicely on those winter type models. It's a lot paler than the standard streaking grime. And finally, the rust streaking grime. That rust one has dried differently to what I was expecting it. It is still within the same sort of realm of the other two, but it is very much more of a lighter brown rather than a bright, reddy, rusty kind of colour. Now you could layer these up quite nicely, quite interestingly. Let one dry completely, then put another layer of another one over the top of that, and that could work rather well. These two could layer up quite well. The winter one could almost be used as almost as a highlight colour over the top of that standard streaking grime. That's interesting. One thing to be aware of with this stuff, it is a lot harder to control the opacity, the density of it on very small detailed pieces like this. it gets down into those little nooks and crannies and it's quite difficult to get out. Whereas another example, well, this is a Warhammer 40k Tau hammerhead I did quite recently. Because it's a lot flatter surfaces, it's a lot easier to kind of manipulate and to take off exactly what you want without taking too much or too little off. And it really helps to kind of accentuate some of the components and the panels in there as well. Now, another thing to think about as well is that on static things like buildings, then you often put the streaking grime vertically from top to bottom because it's being acted on by gravity. On vehicles, you get to play with it a bit more. So you can, go from top to bottom, but especially on aircraft or fast-moving things, you can have it going in the direction of the airflow. So on this example, you've got that streaking grime, the streaks kind of going with the airflow over the fuselage of the tank. Likewise, here you've got it more of a build-up in the lee of that fairing there, whereas it fades out as it goes into a much more exposed area of the panel. So when you're creating the streaks, creating that grime deposits, then you can either do it by gravity or by airflow. And if you go with one of those two, then you get quite a nice, realistic result. If you like that, if you found that useful, please bash that like button and share it across your social media. And I'll see you for the next project.